Made for the approval of this evening's agenda with the deletion of 2024-180. Now is there further discussion? Thank you. Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Aye. Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. That brings us to our ceremonial matters. The first item is 2024-174. Administrator?
Resolution 2024-174 is a proclamation declaring World Elder Abuse Awareness Month, or Day, excuse me. And I believe Commissioner Nolte, you have that proclamation. And Andrew Pratt is here to accept that proclamation on behalf of Clay County Senior Services.
Please come forward, make sure the green light is on, state your name, and then proceed. There we go.
Andrew Pratt.
Thank you.
I'm a board member of the Clay County Senior Services Board.
And could you tell us a little bit about Elder Abuse Awareness Day?
Yes, thank you. So the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services, for the most recent year for Clay County, there were 844 hotline calls for older adults who were in difficulty. In comparison, in Platte County, there were 273. So the need in our county is great. But I'm really glad to share with you that Clay Countyans, through their senior services levy, are helping older adults and their families in our county. Family members who are caring for older adults can be very stressed, and there are programs through our senior centers for caregiver support, for the club in North Kansas City, where caregivers can drop off their family members and they can spend a day and the caregiver can get some respite. There's a respite care program. We're helping older citizens with feelings of loneliness and neglect and isolation. And through our senior centers that are funded through the levy, there's good programs to bring a lot of stimulation and nutrition to our older adults and our Meals on Wheels programs. There's exercise classes. And we need to remember that financial scams are elder abuse. And fortunately, through our levy, we fund community-based repair programs, home repair programs, that helps to mitigate contractor fraud for our older adults in our county. And I do want to also say that all partners, all organizations and service organizations that receive funding through Clay County Senior Services and under the authority of this commission must have a written policy for training their employees to see and recognize when there's elder abuse. And they must have a policy for what they're going to do and how they're going to conduct themselves, all of those staff members, when they see those red flags. And then they also must talk with their program participants and that they understand what elder abuse is. And then if they are experiencing that, how they can, the resources that are available to them and their families for dealing with that. So this is, Mr. Nolte, this is a very important topic, and the board and all the citizens of Clay County appreciate the commission recognizing this with a proclamation and bringing it to awareness during this month. The actual day is June 15th. That's the day that's set aside, but it's great that we are able to do this ahead of that day and raise the awareness in our community and recognize the needs that are there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it's an especially poignant awareness that we bring to this because of the fact that those that we are talking about who are suffering this abuse are those that, in fact, raised us. They're the ones that cared for us when we were at our most helpless and our most vulnerable, and it does seem very fitting that we would essentially return the favor. It's a debt long overdue, and to be able to make sure that we bring awareness to this subject and we reduce it to hopefully someday to zero is certainly a noble mission to be on, and we appreciate folks like you at the senior board and all the other different levels of government that work in this area to make sure that our seniors are able to live out their years in dignity and in some security and happiness. So that is a noble cause, and we appreciate your work on that.
Yes, sir.
With that, Commissioner Wagner, I believe you sought recognition.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for being here this evening. Your presentation reminded me of a couple of points that I think I want to reiterate and are important. One, we talk a lot about how Clay County is a great place to be. And I'll give you one more reason why. It is, as you talked about the levee and how important the levee has been in Clay County, right now there is a group in Jackson County desperately trying to get what we have here in Clay County. And one of the things that I learned in the course of that conversation, which I'm part of in my day job at the Mattie Road Center, is even if you look at the Shepherd Center, just to take one example, the mothership of the Shepherd Center is in Jackson County, yet the location in the Northland receives far more support financially than they do down there. And it just, I just want to point out that all these organizations that are dealing with this very issue that you're talking about are getting support from the citizens of Clay County.
Yes, they are.
And they shouldn't take it for granted. Because it's a big deal. The other thing I want to mention, that isolation issue is so important. And it reminded me of, as some may recall, a few years ago, there was construction along Choteau Parkway to get rid of everything that was kind of along, I won't even get into some of the businesses that were there. That's for another time. But we tried very hard when I was serving in my elected capacity in Kansas City to also try to do some things for the houses around that construction. And there was a gentleman, an older gentleman, I believe in his 70s, who was there. I'm not sure if he's still living today or if he's still in that house today. But we had invested some funds with Northland Neighborhoods through the city to go and help those folks in whatever way they needed to improve their homes. And this gentleman that was there, he had a lot of issues, lots of issues. But the one thing that he wanted more than anything was a battery for his wheelchair because he could not get around as a result of that. Everything else, that's great, but that was the thing that he had to have. And he was by himself, no family around to support him, but the city and Northland Neighborhoods was able to help him at that instance. And so I just want to reiterate that we have a lot of folks that live in Clay County who don't have access to family, who don't have access in some ways to the outside world. And so the things that are paid for through the levy and the things that the organizations that are supported by the levy do is vastly, vastly important. And so I just thank you for coming here and providing that reminder. It was a reminder for me. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner wishing to comment? Is there any member of the public who would wish to comment? Seeing none, we will pause for a moment and we will present you with the resolution, and then we will resume our agenda. Next on our agenda is 2024-184, a resolution for the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a commemoration of that. This one is brought forward by Commissioner Withington, so I'll go ahead and recognize the Commissioner for his comments on that. Proceed.
Kevin's going to start by playing a video.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen, you are about to embark upon a great crusade, toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed people of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well trained, well equipped, and armed. But this is the year 1944. The seamen of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.
All right, thanks, Kevin. All right, so the resolution says, whereas on June 6, 1944, Allied forces launched the largest amphibious assault in history, known as Operation Overlord, marking the beginning of the liberation of Nazi-occupied Europe. And whereas the bravery, sacrifice, and heroism of the Allied soldiers, sailors, and airmen who participated in the Normandy landings known as D-Day forever altered the course of World War II and shaped the destiny of nations. And whereas on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, we honor the memory of those who made the ultimate sacrifice for the cause of freedom, and we pay tribute to the resilience and determination of the Allied forces who fought valiantly to secure victory in one of the most pivotal battles of the war. And whereas the legacy of D-Day serves as a timeless reminder of the unbreakable bond between the United States and its allies, and the enduring values of liberty, democracy, and human dignity for which they fought and continue to defend. And whereas we must never forget the lessons of D-Day and the sacrifices of those who died and fought for the cause of freedom. And we must continue to uphold their legacy by striving for peace, justice, and reconciliation in our world today. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Clay County Board of Commissioners hereby commemorates June 6, 2024, as the 80th anniversary of D-Day and extends its deepest gratitude to the veterans and their families for the immense sacrifice in defense of freedom. And be it further resolved that the Clay County Board of Commissioners encourages all citizens to observe this anniversary with reverence, to honor the memory of those who served, and to, and to reflect on the lessons of courage, unity, and sacrifice imparted by the events of D-Day. And be it further resolved that the Clay County Board of Commissioners pledges to preserve and promote the legacy of D-Day for future generations, ensuring that the sacrifice of the past are never forgotten, and that the principles for which they fought continue to inspire and guide us in the pursuit of a more peaceful and just world. So according to statistics from the National World War II Museum, only less than 1% of World War II veterans are still alive. And I wasn't able to find a living World War II veteran from Clay County, but we do have the Grace family joining us today. Corporal Louis E. Grace, I knew him my entire life from when I was a baby until he passed away in 2016. Corporal Grace landed on Utah Beach. He would go on to fight in the Battle of the Bulge. And then in 2009, he was awarded the French Legion of Honor, which is France's highest honor for his part in the liberation of their country. And so his wife Louise is with us today, his son Jeff, his wife Michelle, their son Andrew, and their daughter Lana is here with us today as well. So, you know, those guys were giants, to storm those beaches and to face, the machine guns had the entire beach sighted, right? And so they faced certain death. The outcome wasn't certain, but they stormed anyway. I don't know where you find the courage to march forward like that. So I'm glad that the Grace family is able to join us today.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks to the members of the Grace family for being here. I think that last name is very apropos for both your family and this country, because it took a lot of grace for us to get through that battle. I just want to, remind two things. One is, in hindsight, we almost think like that it was a foregone conclusion that that battle was going to be successful. And the reality was the person who was speaking first, Dwight David Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, had in his pockets two pieces of paper. One he would read if things were successful, and one he would read if it wasn't. And fortunately, he read the first and not the latter. The other thing that I'll mention is because we do not have those veterans here anymore, I invite folks, if you haven't gone to New Orleans, to the museum down there. I have. It's fantastic, and it tells so many great stories of the individuals who fought, both in D-Day and World War II. But for something closer to home, if you have been to the World War I Museum, there are a number of bricks laid out there. My family has one for my great uncle for World War I, but there's a whole section on World War II. And so we don't want to forget the names of those individuals who fought on our behalf, and there's an opportunity in town to do that. So if you haven't, those who are watching and those here, if you haven't, go. It is worth that visit, just for that reason alone. But thank you again for being here. Thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you. Welcome to the Grace family as well. Just want to take a moment to highlight how incredible the men who fought that day were, the service that they provided not just to their country, but to the entire world. Incredible heroism, unimaginable, frankly, heroism. And really can't overstate the impact that day and those human beings had on the future of the planet. Commissioner Wagner mentioned that it wasn't a foregone conclusion that day. That certainly is true. And I'd add that it's not a foregone conclusion that the peace and prosperity that those men achieved that day, or at least set into motion. Obviously, it was 1944. The war lasted another year. But that was a decisive day in determining the outcome of that war. And it's not a foregone conclusion that the peace and prosperity continues forever. I think we've gotten used to it. We've gotten very normalized to it, and thank God that we have. I'm grateful that we have. Commissioner Withington mentioned that 1% or perhaps fewer than 1% of World War II veterans are still alive. Part of what happens, I think potentially anyway, is that as those folks are no longer with us, what can be lost is the knowledge of those events, the history, and how horrific war on that scale is. On D-Day, more than 10,000 people died, about half from each side. That's in one day. You take every war that the United States has been involved in my lifetime, starting with the Gulf War, conflicts like Somalia, Kosovo, Iraq War, Afghanistan. You combine those all together over the last 40 years, we've lost, thank God, fewer than 10,000 American soldiers. That's over 40 years. So in a single day, you can have war at that scale that is so much worse than anything that we've had to experience in recent decades. And preserving that world order is incredibly important. And we shouldn't ever assume that just because it's been going good these last 80, 79 years, that it's going to continue on that way forever. It's up to us to make sure that that happens. The United States continues to play a foundational role in guaranteeing peace and prosperity across the globe. Sometimes I'm concerned that as we lose some of the memory of that, because even the folks, I've talked about my grandfather before, even folks like him who were too young in World War II to serve. He was born in 1931, so he was 8 when Poland was invaded, 10 when Pearl Harbor happened and the United States joined the war, and 14 by the time the World War was over. Before too long, sadly, even folks who experienced it as children will no longer be with us too. And so I think it's especially important to do resolutions like this, to have conversations like this, because we have to keep the memory of that alive, how horrific war on that scale is with modern weaponry, and how we must do everything that we can to make sure it never happens again. It would be even worse this time. The weapons have only gotten more dangerous since. One concern that I continue to have is that as we get farther away from these events, and as the people who were there for them and saw them firsthand are no longer with us, that it gets easier and easier to just assume the world is going to continue on the way it's been during our lifetimes, which is peace and prosperity, and thank God it has been. And we can allow ourselves to get divided over relatively pretty minor things, pretty petty skirmishes and disagreements over this or that. And there are much, much bigger forces in the world, and much bigger things at stake in terms of life and liberty and economic prosperity, which can all radically change. So just want to take the opportunity as we talk about this to encourage everybody to remember what the big complicated world we live in is, and how incredibly important it is to work together and as a country to make sure the world continues on the way it has these last 79 years. So yeah, those are my thoughts to everybody who served on that day. Obviously, the most unimaginable debt of gratitude is owed to them, and appreciate everybody taking the time to recognize those folks. Thanks.
Commissioner Lawson.
Well, first of all, God bless you for bringing this forward. And thank you so much for coming this evening. We appreciate the family being here. My dad fought in World War II, and it's amazing to me, there are people today who say, oh, the concentration camps never happened. No, none of those things ever happened during World War II. He saw it. He couldn't believe it. He couldn't even verbalize it without falling apart. It was so impactful to him what he saw. And he never forgot man's inhumanity to man. And I think that's the most important lesson we can learn, is that history, if, as they always say, if you don't remember it, you're going to be forced to relive, or something to those words that may not be exact, but it's really true. So often, whether it's Normandy, whether it's the Civil War, whether it's Vietnam, or what other conflict, we learn from what happened in those wars and try never to relive those things again. But the sacrifice these men made, going dead long into, knowing that they may not make it past that beach, but they went. And that kind of loyalty, that kind of dedication to this country, I see it starting to go down the toilet, frankly. You have people that go down on their knee in front of our flag, or people that'll walk off the field when they're playing the national anthem. And it just blows my mind. They don't remember what all happened to secure the freedoms that they've got today. And I hope that we all can remember that. And I hope that we all push our schools to be more involved in teaching the kids our real history, all of it, whether it was the Indian Wars, whether it was the Civil War, and the first, second, and all the other wars that followed. It is imperative that we learn about our history and learn a lot about it. We used to have special classes in school, I remember, that just taught American history. That was a big deal. I don't know if they still do that or not, but it's imperative that we push them to do so, and we never, ever, ever forget. So thank you so much for what you've done, and thank you so much for coming. God bless you, and we appreciate you.
I think certainly we all express gratitude to the families who are here tonight, who had loved ones who were involved in this great battle. I couldn't agree more with Commissioner Lawson when she cites, and I don't remember who the quote is from, but those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. That is probably one of the more frightening epitaphs that you could observe in these kinds of situations. However, it is a great blessing that we have the technology to have the recorded images and voices of these individuals, that we are able to hear from them. And in fact, I saw one of the Sunday morning shows, I believe it was last week, and they were taking veterans of World War II, and they were making basically an interactive hologram, which I thought was astounding, that you could actually interact with that individual, that soldier. I hope that drives home the reality of how horrific a thing war is, especially on that scale. I've been to both Arlington and to Normandy, and it is an eerie kind of an experience to look out and to see what is now a relatively peaceful landscape, and to know that 80 years ago it was literally on fire, that any living thing within that realm was at risk. People, everything were certainly, there were no spared individuals as far as being involved in being into that peril. One of the other images that I have is being at the Nazi gun emplantments, bunkers, and looking out over a field. And it was, again, pretty eerie because you could see some of the guns that were still there that they had used, some of the artillery. But what you were looking out on towards the ocean was basically a field of yellow flowers. And it was, once again, a very sobering thought to think that at that particular spot, so much death and destruction was being wrought. And when you look at that and you see the unprotected landscape for someone trying to take those positions, trying to defeat those guns that were firing on them, it's just astounding that there are people of that courage and that determination who are willing to run across that field in what must have been at the time as well fairly open country and expose themselves to that kind of a danger so that they could enhance the cause of freedom, not just for this country but for the entire globe. It's a very sobering thought. And then when you go to the grave sites and all the rows of white crosses and stars of David that are there at those sites, the serenity somehow underscores the horrific times that those people went through to achieve a world that is safe in so many more ways than than we could possibly appreciate, because we have not experienced the things that those individuals went through. So to say that we have a debt of gratitude is almost seems so far short. But I think that what we're doing here today, the resolution that was brought forward, is probably the best monument in a way, and that is to not forget. That is really what it's about, is not forgetting, not letting their memories grow cold. As long as someone is remembered and their name is uttered, they have not really left us. And so it's a very solemn occasion, and I appreciate the fact that we are able to have the family members here and have them here as the tangible representation of that bravery on that day. Are there any other comments from the commission? Would any of the family members care to come up and make any statements before we present the resolution?
Yeah, my name's Jeff Grace. I'm the youngest son of Lewis Grace. And just for our family, we just want to say thank you, Jason. Thank you for letting us be here, and appreciate your kind words.
It's our honor to have you here. Any other individual wish to speak? Any other citizens wish to make any comments? If not, then we will go ahead and proceed with the presentation of the resolution, and then we will resume our agenda after that. And we have one more matter under ceremonial matters. That would be 2024-185, honorary resolution congratulating, I hope I pronounced it, Rachel Perez. I'm sorry? Rochelle. Sorry. Anyway, this is brought to us by Commissioner Wagner, so if you would like to proceed.
Yes, thank you. I think how this appears on our agenda is right. We've spent our time rightfully commemorating some great sacrifice on behalf of our country. Now we look towards the future, and that future is represented by the person we're about to honor, Rochelle Perez. I met her maybe not even a month ago, maybe just slightly, right? But I had the fortune to go to the Northland Community Foundation's breakfast, and among other things, they were giving out 7 scholarships recognizing some great young people in the Northland. And as I said, there were 7, and as they started announcing the winners, a funny thing started happening. Rochelle was winning them all. She didn't win them all. She got 3 out of the 7, so she had to do a little bit of juggling as she had to stand there for what looked like forever with them as they were announcing all these winners. But I want to point out what she secured. One was the Prosperity Planning Scholarship, which is awarded to a student who has demonstrated a strong work ethic both inside and outside the classroom. She received the Seroptimist International of Kansas City's Northland Healthcare Scholarship, which is awarded to a young woman going into her first year in the healthcare field. And then she won the Harvest Ball Founders Scholarship, which is awarded to a student who has demonstrated outstanding leadership. What you also have to understand is not only did she graduate with her high school diploma from Oak Park High School, which of course makes me a sucker for bringing them in front of the commission, but she got her CNA certification and her associate's degree all at the same time. That's pretty impressive, pretty darn impressive. And she is now getting ready to head to Oral Roberts University, where she will get her Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And we sometimes say, the future is with our young people, but when you have someone who frankly just blew everyone away as they were just watching her get plaque after plaque, the very least we should be able to do is give her a piece of paper recognizing her good work. And so I will just simply say, as I have learned more about Rochelle, I'm just more and more impressed. I know her family, and her mom's sitting right next to her. Hopefully I'm not doing a bad job saying what I'm saying. I'm doing okay. I know she appreciates everything that Rochelle has done, but I think sometimes everyone else needs to recognize what a great job she's done, and that's why we're here today. And so I just want to say thank you, and I'll make one request. My one request is that you come back to Clay County. When you're done getting your degrees and you're ready to go there and really make your mark, I hope that it is here. Although I recognize that maybe it won't be, but I'm at least going to throw in the hat for Clay County and say we'd really love to see you back. But thank you, congratulations for everything you've done.
Any other comments from the commission? Seeing none, Rochelle, I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name before. Would you like to come up and say anything?
I'd like to thank the commission for the opportunity to be here and for the recognition. And I hope to use these funds to further my education and come back and continue to support my community. Thank you.
With that, unless there's anyone else who wishes to speak, we will again come forward with the resolution, and then when we get back, we will once again resume our agenda. Always good to see a fellow Okie excel. That concludes ceremonial matters. Next on the agenda are public comments. Is there anyone from the public who would care to comment on any issues? If so, please come forward, make sure the green light is on, state your name, and then proceed with your statement. That's fine.
Thank you. Okay, so my name is Caitlin Wright. I am one of the 4-H members who came a few months ago to discuss the 4-H program. And today I am here to talk about our 2024 Clay County 4-H Fair. Specifically, we are looking for volunteers to judge our projects and demonstrations. Judges are so important. Without them, we would not be able to have a fair. Some 4-Hers work for 20 to 30 hours on a single project. Last year, the cake decorating project that won Best in Show at the Missouri State Fair was submitted by a 4-Her right here in Clay County. Let me tell you a brief story about why judges are so important. I remember my first year in 4-H when I was a 6-year-old Clover kid, and it was time for my projects to be judged. You could say I was more than a little nervous. Let's see, I remember sitting in a room with my pine cone turkey and snowman made with an old tin can. Then they called my name and I went back to talk with the judge. I was still very nervous, but as soon as the judge started speaking to me, I immediately relaxed and felt much better. Thanks to that judge all those years ago, I have continued in 4-H and become much more confident. There are 2 dates where we really could use volunteers. First, on July 12th, we need volunteers to judge our stationery exhibits. These projects range from cake decorating to woodworking to international foods. They will train you from 2:30 p.m. to 3 o'clock p.m., and 4-Hers will bring their projects from 3 until 7. On the handout that's in front of you, there is contact information for Jenny McGee. Please email her if you would be able to volunteer. When you contact her, you can list areas where you have experience, such as sewing, photography, or filmmaking. For a more detailed list of potential project areas, please see the back of your handout. Secondly, we may need volunteers on July 13th to judge general and working demonstrations. For general demonstrations, a 4-Her will stand up before you and give a 5-minute talk about one of their project areas. These demonstrations will be judged in the morning. In the afternoon, youth will set up booths and do working demonstrations. For an hour, they will work on some type of project, like making pot holders or making pancakes, and you will walk around and judge the different demonstrations. If you are interested in judging either of the demonstration categories, you should contact the 4-H office. The phone number is on your handout. Lastly, the official day of the fair is July 13th. All of you are more than welcome to come. This would be a great opportunity to learn more about the 4-H program. There will be many 4-Hers there, and some have been involved in 4-H for over a decade. On this day, 4-H projects will be on display, members will give general and working demonstrations, and a champion review will be held in the afternoon where public speakers and a theater group will perform. I hope to see many of you at the 2024 Clay County 4-H Fair. Are there any questions?
I see none, but thank you very much for being here and for the participation in a wonderful organization.
Thank you.
Are there any other individuals wishing to comment this evening? Any other individuals wishing to comment on the public comment section before we move on? Sorry about that. I'll try to speak a little more loudly.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate you guys' commission. My name is Zach Alden, lifelong Liberty resident. I work for the Teamsters Union in Kansas City, Local 41. I'm here today as an outreach from Local 41 to ask for you guys. Obviously, there's a contract vote coming up for the Clay County road workers, and a couple of them joined me today. And we're just asking for support from you guys. To help us further and reinvest in our own people in our county. I'm real big in investing in team, and you know, again, I understand there's a lot of variables that go on nowadays. All the stuff that you guys presented today is very indicative of the way the world's going. You know, a lot of people don't want to work. People don't have the fortitude like they did back then. You know, so we're here asking for your guys' support. You guys obviously going to come in front of you guys, the contract, and we do ask for support. It's been a good group to work with. All the management with Clay County, the road crew's been great to work with. And we're here, I'm here on behalf of 41 to let you guys know that we're here to help bridge gaps. I don't believe in the stigma of a union, non-union, contracts are contracts. It is what we operate, everybody operates, a lot of people do anyways, under contract. I'm real excited talking to Carl and some of the other people that we want to help grow the county road program, whether it be through VOTEC, high schools. I think the contract that we were proposed with or that we put together is very indicative of how we want to streamline people into positions of value to help them climb through the ladder and be successful in a career. So I just wanted to reach out and give you guys a heads up that we are interested in all your guys' support and feedback and whatnot and going forward, and we hope that we can work in a collaboration together and be successful. Like I said, as a guy on a team, I hate subcontract work. It is what it is. I know it's not a cheaper benefit. I do know that. I see all these signs out for help and apply, need this. I don't know the answer right now. I don't know if it's money. I don't know if it's intangibles. I don't know. Getting people to go to work is hard. So we have dropped drastically the membership, the group at Clay County. I believe 13 down to 6. That's scary as a taxpaying citizen here in Clay County. That's scary to me. There's a lot of things I learned that I didn't know. I want to see that, again, I like to be a winner. I want to help contribute back to growing that group. I don't like to use the metaphorical thumb on the head, but I know what it's like, a subcontractor coming in that isn't there every day or doesn't have the investment every day to show up, to have the integrity or pride, and that's what we hope for. So I'm just reaching out to you guys, give you a heads up, introduce myself, and look forward to working with you guys and appreciate any support you guys can give us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other citizens wanting to come forward and make comment at this time? Seeing none, that brings us to our consent agenda. Administrator?
The consent agenda allows the commission to act upon items considered to be routine and approved in one motion. These may include items that have been reviewed by the commission in a prior session. There will be no separate discussion unless a commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. There are 6 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first item is Resolution 2024-178, which is approving invoice payments for the county from May 23rd to May 31st. There are 480 invoices totaling $1,971,004.99. Resolution 2024-182 is consideration of a agricultural lease with Rhodes Farms for Eastern Parks. Resolution 2024-183 approving a term and supply contract for countywide generator services with Central Power Systems and Services and Pro Circuit Incorporated. Resolution 2024-176 approving a term and supply contract with George Butler Associates for inspection services. Resolution 2024-177 is approve a contract amendment with Institute for Building Technology and Safety for inspection services. And Resolution 2024-171 approving a sales agreement and authorization the lease of 4 Caterpillar motor graders for the Highway Department.
Very well. Is there a motion related to our consent agenda? Commissioner Johnson.
I move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Motion's been made for the approval of this evening's consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
This brings us to our regular agenda. First item on this evening's regular agenda is 2024-179. Administrator?
Resolution 2024-179 is approving invoice payments for the Clay County Prosecutor's Office from May 23rd to May 31st. There are a total of 35 invoices for the amount of $11,440.83.
Commissioner Johnson?
Move to approve 2024-179.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2024-179. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
I recuse myself.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Motion passes, 5 in favor, 1 recusal.
Next item on our regular agenda is 2024-174. Administrator?
Resolution 2024-174 is approving the cost proposal for design of replacement of the old 210 bridge, and Highway Administrator Terry Griffin is here to provide information to the Commission.
Please proceed.
I think I'd have this down by now. Terry Griffin, Highway Administrator. This is a request to approve a contract to design a replacement for the old 210 bridge. These are some photos of what the bridge looks like today. You can see that it is very badly damaged. It's currently closed, has been closed to all traffic since April of 2022. The bridge was originally built in 1946 and it's definitely showing its age. We're asking for a contract with Veenstra & Kim Engineering to design a replacement bridge for this location. We will go into construction after design is complete, of course, and we will be applying for grant money, either BRO funds or other grant funds that are available from time to time when we get to construction. But in the meantime, we are asking you to approve the contract for design. The contract amount is $141,300. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer those.
Are there any questions from the Commission? Commissioner Johnson?
Actually, I do have a question. What do they do with the old bridge?
It's in poor condition, so they will destroy it and cart it off to throw away.
The scraps?
Scraps. It's concrete and metal that's rusted through. If we go back to the photos.
So we don't get anything from that?
No. We pay the contractor to get rid of it, actually, when it goes to construction.
Okay. I would like to move to approve 2024-174.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-174. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
That brings us to 2024-175. Administrator?
Resolution 2024-175 is approving ARPA funding and sign a contract for the Nation Road Stream Bank repair and bridge replacement with Decker Construction, and Highway Administrator Griffin will provide information on that project.
Please proceed.
You will probably recall these photos. We've seen them a couple times before. The stream bank on Nation Road collapsed during an extreme storm and after several extreme storm events in 2022, and the road has been closed at this location ever since that time. These photos show some of the damage that has occurred, and as a kind of a point of reference as to how large this slide area is, you can see on the right-hand picture people standing on what's left of the roadway. And that's the size of the people compared to the size of the damage to the stream bank. So this is an extreme thing. We have had Veenstra & Kim Engineering design a solution for it, and then we asked them to go back and work with Decker Construction on a value-added engineering concept. They have worked together, and they've come up with a design and a solution that will save the county money and allow us to do an additional project nearby. This is a map that shows the immediate location of the slide area that's circled there in yellow. Initially, the design had said we would basically build a vertical wall that would allow us to put the roadway back exactly where it was, but the cost of that was really high priced, so we asked them to go back and look at it again. So it's been redesigned, and instead they will move the road about 30 feet north of its present location. We have a verbal agreement from the property owner there to donate the needed right-of-way for the project. And with that, they will connect the two ends of the roadway, reconstruct it, and still put major armoring and reconstruction on the stream bank. It will be a terraced slope rather than a vertical wall, which will allow placement of rock for armoring and for protection against further erosion as the time goes on. The cost of this part of the project has been reduced from roughly $2 million down to $950,000 by the value engineering that we've added. So because of those savings, we're asking to take a look at a bridge that is just north of there. It's only about 300 feet away from the slide area project, so it's very nearby. It's a bridge that's in poor condition and will although it is still, it's closed to traffic right now because of the way the layout of the road is there for the slide, but it would still be open to traffic, but probably not for more than a couple more years. So we're asking, while the road is closed, can we replace the bridge because of the stormwater damage that has occurred to the bridge over the years? There are steel plates on the bridge that are rusting. There are bridge pilings are scoured, that is, they're failing. The stream banks are eroded, and there is damage as well to the stream channel. So if we do that, there's some pictures of some of the damage that you can see on the bridge. It's not in extremely good condition. But if we extend the location of the project, we can add the bridge to this project, and the cost of the bridge will be $1,050,000, bringing the total cost of the project for the entire project to $2 million, which is roughly what we thought it would cost for the stream bank to begin with. So we're asking today for you to approve a contract with Decker Construction to do the construction work for both parts of this project. And if you have any questions about these projects, I would be glad to answer that.
Would both of these projects, although they are obviously quite related, would they be worked on concurrently so that we would not have, so that we minimize the amount of time when this roadway is closed?
Yes, that's the plan.
Commissioner West, oh, is that your? Okay. Well, I must have cheated and looked on your paper. Commissioner Johnson.
I move to approve 2024-175.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024-175. Is there further discussion? Thank you very much for rolling these together. That's very, we appreciate the foresight that you've demonstrated in this, and the department and all involved. With that, unless there's further comment, Commissioner, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
2024-180 has been removed from our agenda, so that brings us to 2024-181. Administrator?
Resolution 2024-181 is approving a cooperative purchase service agreement, prevailing wage compliance form, and drainage improvement proposal for the drainage improvements in the Oak Brook subdivision with Mega KC Cooperative. And Terry Griffin is here to provide information on that project.
Please proceed.
Mega KC is a local firm that is under contract currently with the Johnson County Wastewater Unit, and it is a contract that we can use as a cooperative contract. So we're asking you to approve Mega KC as a cooperative contract vendor, construction company for the county to use on this as well as on potentially other projects in the future. Also attached to this is the agreement for them to be a cooperative vendor, as well as their affidavit of compliance with the Clay County resolution regarding prevailing wage. The project that we're asking them to do is in the Oak Brook subdivision. We had done some stormwater work using ARPA funds there previously, and we're asking to use some more of our ARPA funds at different locations in the same neighborhood. The curbs here, as you can see in the photos, are flat. They're not the typical lazy back or higher curves. They're just a flat ribbon of concrete along the edge of the road. They do not channel stormwater as they were originally intended to do when the subdivision was put in the 1980s and 90s. So there are places within the subdivision where water pools after each storm. We're proposing that Mega KC put in some storm drains that will allow that to happen. The bottom photo shows the type of drain that has been put in at the other locations a couple of years ago. Those are very successful, and we're asking Mega KC to put that type of storm drain in again at 2 other locations. Those drains connect to the storm drain system that is already in place within the subdivision. The cost of construction is $46,400.24. They expect the work to be completed in approximately 2 weeks, and the roads will not need to be closed during that time. And I will be glad to answer any questions you may have about the project.
When I see the water standing on the roadway like that, one of the first things that crosses my mind is in the wintertime, that would be a formidable sheet of ice and certainly cause a lot more hazard when someone's using that roadway.
Yes, it can, very definitely.
Commissioner Wagner, I did not ask your question this time, I guess.
No, I waited until you did. Thank you.
Proceed.
Thank you very much. Terry, my only question is really more of a process question. To me, the price is right and all of that. But because we call out certain things like our prevailing wage ordinance and so on, I just note that the total price is below the threshold. But we are asking them to fill out the forms because this is a new vendor for us. Is that why?
Well, because they are a new vendor, so they've not signed the form, but whenever we have a contractor that has the potential to be on projects that do meet the prevailing wage minimum, which is $75,000
Right.
on a single project, we ask them to sign the affidavit up front saying that they will comply should they be on a project that is there. That way we have the
So you've got it
private on
before-
file and we're ready to go.
So it's kind of a preemptive sort of thing
Yes.
for the future. Okay,
Yes,
fantastic.
it is.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Out of curiosity, do you know what the prevailing wage is that we'll be paying for this?
The prevailing wage depends on what type of work is being done by each individual, whether they're laying contract or digging a ditch or operating equipment or whatever. Those can be found on the Missouri Department of Labor, and it changes from year to year as to what that wage is, and it's specific to each county in Missouri.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, Commissioner Johnson, you're recognized to close. Unless you have
First,
further
I'm going to move to
question.
approve 2024-180.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you already had. I anticipated you. Motion's been made for the approval of 2024-181. Now that the motion has actually been made,
Wait. This
181,
is,
correct?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I said 180. It's 2024-181.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I heard what I was thinking you
no,
meant.
I said the wrong one.
So, just to repeat the motion's been made for the approval of 2024-181. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
That concludes our regular agenda. Next on our item, our discussion items. There are 2 discussion items. The first one is planning and zoning notification area, and that has been brought forward by planning and zoning. So just go ahead and recognize Kip Jones to begin our conversation.
Kip Jones, Planning Director. So we thought it might be a good time to bring before you the written notice discussion of the adjoining property letters that planning and zoning sends when we have a case. So to give you the kind of current code, it comes out of the land development code. So if the commission would wish to change this, we would need to do an amendment to the land development code. And it basically states that we send letters to property owners that own property within 1,000 feet of the subject parcel for the case. We looked at the history of the code. We traced that 1,000 feet all the way back to 1985, the 85 version of the code. The versions before that did not have the 1,000-foot requirement in the code. So let's talk about some other jurisdictions, what they do. Platte and Clinton County do the 1,000-foot, just like Clay County. Ray County and Jefferson County do 600 feet. Jackson County kind of has a unique style that they do. They do it by their tiers. In the rural tier, they do 1,000 feet. Suburban tier, which would be more densely populated, is 300 feet, and the urban is more city style, which is 185 feet. And then St. Charles County only sends it to properties that touch the subject parcel. So kind of all over the board with some counties that we looked at. Some additional information, the Planning Zoning Commission did discuss this topic, but decided not to recommend a change to the County Commission. Other items to consider would be staff time presenting these or preparing these letters, cost for applicants. Now, you probably will remember that we changed from certified mail to regular mail, so the cost wouldn't be huge depending on the number of letters we sent. And then there was discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission about could it be done for just certain cases. Staff had a discussion about that, and we thought the best way, if that's what you would choose, would be to do it. Usually our most interesting cases are conditional use permits or major cases, which we would consider subdivisions with infrastructure and new interior streets. So we're talking lots of lots, or rezonings that would include commercial or industrial. Typically, those are our most controversial cases. So you could choose, if you chose to change it, to just do it for those cases. Wanted to give you some examples. So I've got 3 examples for you and kind of what would happen if you increase that footage. So this first one is called Maloney Meadow. It went in front of the County Commission last year. We picked it because it's kind of a standard case. So it's off Nation Road, north of Kearney. Our standard case, we send anywhere from about 20 to 30 letters. In this case, for the 1,000 feet, we sent 28 letters. If you go and try to draw here, just so you know what you're looking at. So this is the subject parcel there. This is our 1,000-foot radius, which is the 28 letters. Then if we go 1,500, it goes to 51. 2,000, it would go to 78. And then 2,500 would be 105. And then this area is the 1 mile, which would make that 260. So that's a pretty standard case. Now, also keep in mind, I did not have my staff go through and take out the parcels where a property owner owns multiple parcels. So this is probably a little high because obviously we don't send 2 letters to the same property owner. So that's one example. The second example is actually the case that kind of started this discussion, which was the original Law Enforcement Resource Center off of Stillhouse Road. And we ran the scenario for this one. It went from 19 letters to 39 to 54 to 69 to 325. We thought this one was a good example because it is east of Liberty in a very rural area. Didn't send a whole lot of letters for this case. And then we've got the exact opposite of that one. This was a case that they actually waited to apply because we were getting ready to change it from certified to regular mail. And we sent 207 letters because of these subdivisions within Kansas City. And they were going to have to spend $1,400 in certified mail, but they waited, and I don't remember what their total was, but it was much less than that. But this one goes all the way up to almost 2,000 letters if we go to the 1 mile. Again, that's on the other extreme end of an example. So I would be happy to answer any questions you have. Yeah, we haven't done the curtain in a while, so I had to do the curtain. And really what we would like to get is a consensus of, do you think 1,000 feet is good? Do we want to look at changes? And then if we would want to change that, then staff would present a amendment to the Land Development Code to the County Commission. And I do want to also mention for the comprehensive plan, claycountycompass.com, the draft document is on that website for review. So you can read the draft document and it's open for public comment. The public can click right on that document and make comments, and that's open till June 10th. And obviously we have the combined session where the County Commission will hear about that next week. So I think I'll stop there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the commissioners had.
We will start our discussion with Commissioner Lawson.
Yeah, I live in a rural area, and the gentleman who lived behind my back pasture He passed away. He wasn't even cold in the ground, and the family had it all plotted out to see how they could get it sold and make lots of money. Luckily, they have about 5 to 10 acre lots back there. And the homes are all beautiful homes, great, but it's so impactful to the people around. Yeah, they're nice people, they don't bother anybody, but now I'm limited on whether I can deer hunt there or I can't. And, little things like that impact the person that owns the land. So, I can see going up to 1,500. I think that the cost to me, is not even a factor that enters in. What it is the person who lives in the rural area and somebody's going to develop big time, it's their quality of life. Now, some people won't care, and they'll say, they're not that close to me, I don't mind. But I think you need to take a little bit bigger scope than 1,000 feet. That's nothing if you really think about it. And just because that's the way we've always done it, doesn't mean that's the way we always have to do it. I'd like to see it go up to 15, and the difference in 19 or 39 letters, I don't think that makes that big of a deal. And if we have to go to regular mail, nothing wrong with that, rather than the certified. They're still going to get the letter. They still have the ability to open it and then say, whoa, I gotta stop this, or this is fine with me. So, I don't know, I'd like to see it get expanded some. I think that it's fair to everybody in the area that at least they have a voice in that decision. So, that's my thought on it.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you. Thank you, Kip. Appreciate it. My proposal is we keep it at 1,000, except for the cases that Director Jones, the major cases that he mentioned, we go up to 1,500 on those, and 1,000 everything else. And then we'll have the issue nice and resolved. That's my proposal. Thanks.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to split the difference. And no, actually not related to distance per se, but number of respondents. Because in my mind, you start getting in issues when there's, well, I'll say it this way. If you don't have an opportunity to get good public feedback because not enough people live close enough to the property, and this is sort of what happens when it comes to liquor licenses in Kansas City. If you don't get enough addresses to send information to, then the ring goes out further until you do get to that point, which could mean, in this particular case, maybe it's not 1,500 feet. It could be 2,000. It could be 2,500. And I guess what I offer with my harebrained idea is just simply the notion that what I heard previously when this came up, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, is because the lots were so big, you were only really getting to a handful of people, but you were obviously affecting more, which I think is to your point. So it just seems to me that perhaps instead of distance, it is more about number of property owners that you communicate with. And to our colleague's point, if you hit enough at 1,000, then okay. But if you don't, then that may be cause to go further out. So I'll just offer that as a splitting the baby option. And maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but I'll just throw it out there.
And I failed to mention, this is one aspect of the public outreach. We also, by state statute, have to put the case in the newspaper, which we do, and we also post a sign on site. So just failed to mention that.
Commissioner Johnston.
Yeah, so I don't really know the solution to this. I guess my first question is, the mailers are paid for by the applicant?
Yes, sir.
So we expand the mailer, it's more money they're going to be charged. And they're paying what?
68 cents per letter.
60, okay. So this kind of came up last week, or a week before, whenever we did the volleyball thing on Ahigh 112th. And I guess to talk from the property owner side of thing, and this isn't really a tangible thing, but I could tell you, in that situation, 1,000 yards, or 1,000 feet, what is it, feet? 1,000 feet, that was met, you guys did that, a sign went up and everything. But there's a sense, in different areas of the county, there's just a sense of community. In that particular area, you had the corner where that volleyball thing was going, you had Legacy Park, which is a housing tract, which is a small housing tract with a close-knit group of people. Then you had next to that, it's down 112th Street, it's all larger lots, from 20 to 100 acre lots down that street. So they're very spread out, but it's a very close-knit community out there, country. They're my neighbors, that's where I live. We're all on text together, we all, know everything's going, an odd vehicle drives down 112th Street, we're talking about it. The chief of police is my next door neighbor, and so we're pretty close. And so what had happened is none of us knew about this until later it came out. And we were notified by a sign, so we saw that. But I think there was a sense of feeling that, hey, this was our right or wrong. A sense that, hey, this is our neighborhood and we didn't know about this. We didn't know what was going on. Not your fault. Like I said, you guys did what you're supposed to do. And I don't know if there's a solution to that. I don't know if there's a fix to that. I don't know if we need to fix that or not. I don't know, that's just, boo-hoo, you didn't get notified. Who are you? But, and maybe that's the case, and I can live with that if that's the case. But I think some of these areas, you have the sense of community. Hey, this is our community. We've got this new, whatever's going in our community, and we don't really have a say in it, or we didn't really get notified of it, or we felt like we were kind of left out of the loop, or like nobody really cares about us kind of a thing. And again, that's maybe a victim mentality. And so I don't know that there's a one size that fits all, and I was talking about this earlier today, and 1,000 feet might be plenty or even more than enough in some locations, and that might be a lot of houses if it's a densely populated. Other places it might, maybe reaching out a little bit further than that would be better. I know in your shop, people in your shop and people with your kind of brain are very letter of the law, black and white, this is what it says, this is what we're going to do. I would like to see, and I don't know if you have to codify this or not, but I would like to see you or someone in your shop having the ability to, hey, you know what, we're going to go out 1,000 feet on this one, but you know what, I think we should reach out to this pocket of people right over here. Because the way this is set up and the way this community is we should maybe let them know with a letter or whatever. Now, I don't know if there's issues with that or not, if there's, giving you that kind of gray area to work in to cause some consternation or not, but just a thought, just because I don't know if there's one, just like with any law, we make these laws and they don't always work for everybody, for every situation, particularly when you're talking about the county, when it's so drastically different, between neighborhoods and more rural areas. And I'm just talking out loud here. I don't know if that's even feasible, but that's where my thoughts are on this.
And if I may just address that a little bit, I would kind of lean towards Commissioner Wagner's idea. If you want to meet a minimum number, I would prefer that idea over my position having to make a call that I think this case is going to be controversial, and I think more people want to know about this case. I think that puts whoever's in my office in a bad position. So I would say, if we want to reach out to at least 30 people or 30 property owners or 50, I think that's more manageable from my position, because we have had cases where we thought as staff, hey, this really isn't that big a deal. And then we get here and there's a room full of people.
Yeah.
And my experience in my 10 years has been that if the neighbors are going to be interested in a project, they are going to find out about the project one way or the other, because there are multiple times where we fill this room and it's standing room only. But I would need to think about that idea a little bit more, but I'm not sure that I would want that discretion.
Yeah, okay. We got some other people waiting to talk.
Sure. Commissioner Withington, you're next. Oop, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. There you go, now you're ready.
So I'd like to see you go out for a 10-mile radius.
You're going to have to talk to my office coordinator. She's not going to like that too much.
No, I'm just kidding. Hey, I like Commissioner Carpenter's suggestion. I really don't have too much of a thought on this, but I do like Commissioner Carpenter's proposal. So whatever you guys come up with, I'll be fine with. I'm not going to lose any sleep over this, so.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and make a comment on this. As far as notification goes, as you say, I think a lot of people do know about it. Obviously, it's not going to work that way in all cases, but there are other means of a person finding out apart from a letter from the county on that this is being considered. As you say, signs. I think there's a number of ways to find out. We seem to be at the top of the scale with the 1,000 feet as far as our contemporaries within our, or I should say our like entities, because we are the same as Platte County. Ray seems to be a little less. Jackson, obviously, there's a lot of urban area there. Jefferson County, of course, and St. Charles are not necessarily like counties. I think we are kind of at the top of the standard, but I think more to the point, whether we decide to expand it or not, I think it needs to be a static measurement, because we're talking about an even application of law at this point. So I don't think we can have Mr. Smith come in, and for him it is 1,000 feet, and Mr. Jones comes in and he has to do 1,500. I think fairness kind of demands that we have one standard. Now, if we were to go to a standard that would include number of people, that would be a little different story. But in my estimation, I think that it has to be, one size fits all doesn't work. However, equal standing under the law is, I think, so. And it's not this is some gigantic, Supreme Court case in the making by any means. Don't get me wrong, but it seems to me that an even application of regulation is important. And I also have a little bit of apprehension of putting this onto the shoulders of of staff as to whether or not they want to expand or not on a requirement. I think that when we act upon these issues, we are in fact acting, if I understand correctly, you're a counselor, that we are acting in the guise of judges, not necessarily legislators. And so there's an application of law there that gives us a higher responsibility. Am I right in that?
Yeah, generally speaking, that's right. You have a different role when it comes to planning issues.
And so there's a little bit of a different application on how we approach these matters, because the consequence could be taking a matter that did not end satisfactorily for one of the parties, and then it could be potentially used as grounds for an appeal to the courts, and that just makes it more difficult to do development in Clay County. So whatever we do, I think it needs to be evenly applied to all applicants, and not while I think there is the temptation to try to apply it, to tailor it to a situation, I think that way, while well-intended, is fraught with some unintended consequences. Commissioner Carpenter, you are recognized. Oop, darn it. I am sorry, I keep using, there we go.
Thank you very much. So I agree, Commissioner, in terms of not having it be a judgment call of Director Jones. I don't think that would be the best way forward. I do think that specifying different types of zoning requests is perfectly, makes a lot of sense to me. I assume that would be legal to do, to treat putting in a subdivision differently than putting in a new fence for a individual property owner.
Yeah, I believe so. We'll have county council review it, but I have not seen anything in the state statutes that dictates that.
Okay. With the volleyball, that would have qualified under the 1,500?
It would have.
As a commercial
It was a conditional use permit, so if you decided to go with the major cases, it would fall under whatever heightened level you decided.
All right. Well, I still think that makes the most sense to me. That way, if it's a small, project that some individual person's doing, we can keep that at 1,000. That's also less likely to generate the the need for a wider interest in the matter. Obviously, when you're talking about big developments going in, there would be more room for people to have thoughts and concerns on that, so notifying more people. So it seems to me like Director Jones has given us a nice opportunity to keep it at 1,000 for most things, and then 1,500 for the bigger things. But, you know, like Commissioner Withington said, as a Western Commissioner, this is, you know, this is more y'all from the East. So if anybody else has concrete proposal that they would like to make, they should make it. Otherwise, I think the 1,000 and 1,500 combinations, that makes a lot of sense to me.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Lawson next, but I just would, just for an informational point, could you walk us through what the process would be should we go down this road, just so we're all absolutely clear on if we decide to make a change, what would be the steps that would be required? Then I'll go to Commissioner Lawson.
So we would basically just come back with a revision. Maybe it might be multiple options hearing tonight's discussion, and then you would pick whatever the consensus was for the best option and vote to approve that, and we would amend the code and we would enact that with our next round of cases after that was adopted.
And it would not necessarily go back to planning and zoning.
No, I have talked to the Assistant County Counsel about that, and he indicated that it did not need to go back to Planning and Zoning Commission.
Very good. I just want to make sure we had our should we decide to make a change, we would understand the process involved. With that, Commissioner Lawson, you are recognized.
You know, something you said, Kip, you said, well, if people really want to know, they have ways of finding out. Commissioner Johnson didn't know that that was happening. You know, there were people in that area in close proximity, actually, you know, past 1,000 feet. They didn't have any idea that that was going to go on. You know, I'd like to see it set up, you know, if you really think about it a little bit, if you got a group, like say in Kearney, and there's a subdivision that sits out not far out of town, pretty close to town. What 1,000 feet is going to more than take everybody in close proximity to that. But once you move out a little bit into the unincorporated area, it's a whole different kettle of fish. It's not like it is in town. So it is a benefit to those individuals, and we got to think about not what's good for planning and zoning, not what we see in our everyday life, but what's better for the people that have to live with whatever we decide on here. So I'd like to see it where even if we could have some creative something from you that would say, if it's in a township or something of that nature, it's a subdivision of blah, blah size, then 1,000 feet is good. If it's an area like the guys that came the other night and we're talking about, oh no, it wasn't you guys, you didn't know about this, planning and zoning. I went to the planning and zoning meeting. Sometimes when they have subdivision guys that come, they're going to put a subdivision off of 92 and WHB Road. Now, there's very few houses around there. So they've got hundreds of acres that they own. They're just going to start off with just 6 houses that sit right next to 92 Highway that all sit on, I don't know, it's 3 acres or something like that, you know, front onto 92. So that's not too bad. And those individuals that it would touch would really, they need to be letting more people than just 1,000 feet, because 1,000 feet would be a couple of houses across the street. That'd be it that would need to be notified. Whereas once that they start building and they're touching more back towards Rhine King and all of that back in there, then you need to be going farther than that, because those people sit on bigger acreages and they don't want a bunch of houses, you know, that are piled up right next to them, you know, a smaller subdivision. So I think it's going to have to be divided between in town and out in the country. If there's a way that that can happen, I don't know, but it seems like that would make it a little bit more livable when you're talking about something closer to town.
Commissioner Johnson.
Two comments. First, do you know by chance how many of our planning and zoning commissioners, that's what they're called, commissioners? How many of them actually live outside of city limits in unincorporated Clay County?
I believe 6 of the 8. The 2 that wouldn't would be Commissioner Nolte and our transportation manager, I don't believe lives outside city limits.
So the rest of them are actually...
The rest of them are required to live
that's
outside
good to
city
know. I
limits.
didn't realize that. That's good to know. I appreciate that. No, so the other thing I thought was, and I don't want to make this about me and about this last project because it's not. I actually abstained from it last week or whenever it was we did it. But it was the fact, I thought it was odd that I wasn't notified, and the fact that I can not only see the property from my house, I can actually smell the property sometimes from my house. And actually the septic system that's right next to that property, I can smell from my house. So to me, it feels really close to me. Just the fact that and now I'm going to see a commercial property. Now, certainly I live up on a hill, so it's a little bit, different than most situations. But it just goes back to I think it's difficult for one size to fit all. I think if the 1,500 feet was incorporated into the commercial and that was included in that, I think a few more of us would have been notified, including the airport across the street from us that wasn't notified either. But nonetheless, I don't want to belabor this. You guys are doing a great job and doing your best to make notifications, so I'm not picking on you guys at all, so don't think that. I just thought it was odd that there's some people on that particular project that weren't notified, and there was another project that wasn't. But to be clear, I did find out eventually, I forget how I found out. I saw something somewhere. But then later, I did see a sign that went up. Although the sign was blown over half the time, so yeah, I know it's difficult to keep those up. But.
And we used to put the signs out about a month before, but then they get stolen, and that's a big issue. I get it. And to touch Commissioner Lawson's point, we could choose to do something like Jackson County. Now, I would advise that we need to wait until the new comprehensive plan is adopted, and we could choose to go by tier. Currently, the current comp plan has 3 tiers, and it'd be, we could do it by those 3 tiers, but then we'd be changing it this fall. So that could be done where the areas that are deemed to be agricultural, the rural areas are the 1,500. Then as you get closer into the city, we could have tiers. So that could be done. Just want to address that. And then I do also want to address that if the property that's being rezoned or the portion of the property that's being used for a conditional use permit, we do go from the outside boundaries of that property. So if they're rezoning 80 acres, we go from the outside boundary. So every adjacent property owner always gets notified, and then that's where that 1,000 feet starts, just to clarify that.
Commissioner Wagner, there you go.
Thank you. So like my Western colleagues, I don't have a dog in this hunt, but nevertheless, I'll at least elaborate on what I suggested earlier to see if it takes in some of those issues that have been spoken to. So again, the thought would be, again, you're starting at 1,000 feet, but as opposed to focusing on the distance, you're focusing on who is being notified, the numbers that are being notified. So let's say, just for the heck of it, we want to make sure at least 25 people are notified. And you know where I'm going with this, so just bear with me. Let's just say we want to make sure no matter what happens, at least 25 people are notified. Well, within the first 1,000 feet, within a suburban, you're going to hit 25 and a whole lot more, right? But if I am in a rural situation, maybe within 1,000 feet, I'm only hitting 2. So now I'm going to go out 1,500 feet and see what I pick up. And maybe at that point, I only pick up a total of 20. So I'm going to go 500 feet more. Well, at that point, maybe I'm now up to 40 or 50, but because it is within my threshold of 25, all of them are going to get that communication, which at that point may be at 2,000 feet, right? So my number of 25 is pretty arbitrary. It could be whatever number you want, but the idea is simply if we want to make sure that enough people are being notified what is the number that we're looking for, and then you just go out until you hit it. And if you go over that with the last ring you hit, fine, but at least you have hit your minimum amount. And so the thought would be then that whether it's rural or suburban or an urban, you just pick the number you want to hit, and then you keep going out until you hit it. And by virtue of the urban versus rural, urban you're going to be much closer, rural you're going to have to go further to hit your number. So that's generally how it would work. I think that's correct in saying?
Yeah, I think that could be done, and I would want to go at probably 500 feet
Increments.
intervals,
Yep.
because I don't want to be choosing this property owner, so I want to set that standard.
Exactly right, exactly right. So again, I have no dog in that hunt, but just throwing out that as an option. Thank you.
There were two things that you said that I thought were, I think, very, very good points. The first one being that perhaps the diameter would be set by the classification of the tier that it resides in, as you were pointing out, I think Jackson County. That does make sense to me. That strikes me as an even and objective way to administer this, and it seems fair and even-handed. The other thing that you had mentioned was, perhaps waiting until the plan was completed and put into place. Whether that is or is not something that we would care to do, I don't know, but I think it's a good point to bring up. So I don't see any other comments, but I do feel as though staff is maybe looking for some sort of instruction from this. So can you tell us, Administrator, what sort of instruction you would like to get from us at this moment?
Well, we certainly appreciate all the input. I think let us go back based on the comments that have been heard, and we'll come back to you all with an option or several options for you all to consider. Probably what I'm hearing is, minimum of 1,000 feet and then X amount of individuals contacted may be the solution, which is, the question then will become, what is that magic number? So let us take a look at that and maybe look at a few more cases, and we'll come back to you.
Does that sound like a reasonable way forward? Is that a consensus with the commission that we have, or would somebody like to voice another thought on this? Okay, am I seeing enough head nods to interpret this as a consensus? So it sounds like we would like to proceed along the lines you just outlined. With that, we will move on to our next discussion item. That would be funding to support local nonprofits, and that would be the administrator. So if you would like to proceed. Do you want to take over? Oh, no.
Apparently, the computer is a little slow tonight.
What's that? Let's get this thing rolling.
Okay, no pressure, right? Happy to do that. I have no curtains, I'm sorry. But we do wanted to get back in front of the commission to talk a little bit about funding support for the local nonprofits. As the commission will recall, during the budget process, there is a line item, and that there has been historically where we have funded outside agencies throughout the budget process. When the 2024 budget was adopted by the commission, that was one of the things that you had a lot of discussion about how to move forward, and so you wanted to talk about sort of a new process about that. So what we'd like to do tonight is kind of get some input from you all about how you'd like to move forward with that. So I'm going to start a little bit with just really some historical information for the commission and for the public. So what you see here is historical information on what has happened over the last 5 years in our annual budgets. So the chart on the left will show you the total amount that was funded for outside agencies. And you can see in 2020, that amount was $255,245. Went up slightly in 2021 and 2022. Those were both the same amount, about $313,720. It did jump up again in 2023 to about $315,350. And then in this year's budget, the number went down. As you will recall, there was a lot of discussion, and so some of those funds were reallocated to fund an additional assistant prosecutor position. The chart on the right shows you the agencies that were receiving funding over the last 5 years in those numbers that I just gave you. So we have the University of Missouri Extension is in that line item, Rebuilding Together Kansas City, Northland Neighborhood, the EDC, Clay County Soil and Water, the Northland Healthcare, and Children's Mercy had received funds in several of those years, but did not receive funds in 2023 or in 2024. So just again to kind of recapture what has been our prior practice. I have done 2 or 3 budgets now for the county, and when I first arrived and we started going through with the budget team, this line item came up. And so the question and the process has been, the budget team would notify the prior year's recipients that it was budget time and for them to submit their application for funding. The agency would present information to the budget team, and then in the proposed budget that we would present to the commission, we would have a recommended funding amount per agency. During the budget process, then the commission, you would review the information, hear presentations, sometimes, most times lately, from the applicants themselves. And then when the budget got adopted, then after that, then we would come before the commission with a service agreement with each agency, and then the funding would be forwarded to that particular agency. So one of the questions that I had when I first got here is, well, how are these organizations selected? And really, it was just a matter of who's in the queue is who we contact each year. And we know that we have a number of agencies in the county that provide some great opportunities for our residents. So just kind of looking about, you wanted to change the process, you wanted to open it up, and so kind of came up with some information here for you all to consider about supporting local nonprofits. Why, what's the purpose, right? It's a partnership with Clay County not-for-profits to provide quality of life for our residents. To be eligible, and again, this is all up for discussion from the commission, but to be eligible to apply for funding going forward, they would be a 501c3 here in Clay County that has a service area in Clay County. They have an office in Clay County. The majority of their services and programs are for Clay County population, or their majority of their activities are here in Clay County, and that the agency would comply with federal and state laws. That would also mean the most recent resolution that the commission passed with regard to immigrants, right? And so looking at the general funding assistance, the funding would be a one-year award, right? So there's no guarantee for any agency that you got money this year doesn't mean you're going to get next year, that it's a competitive process. We would recommend agencies refrain from using any funding from the county for any kind of permanent personnel. We do this all the time when the county applies for grants. It's typically, they're not looking for something that is sort of an ongoing cost because this may not be sustainable. And also then it would be part of the budget cycle, and commissioners would finalize the funding amount adopted in the budget ordinance. So it's, again, the process would be, it would be competitive. The organizations would submit an application. The question then is, when you get the applications, what is the process to evaluate those applications and those programs? So you could come up with some project evaluation criteria. These are just examples with the rubrics on rating different priorities, whether it's health and safety, critical items, whatever that looks like that the commission wanted. Recommend the funding be included in the proposed budget presented to the commission. After the budget was adopted, still have service agreements with those organizations, and the organizations would then be required to submit financial and at least a performance report regarding what the grant or the funding was for. And again, just to give some information, what I have listed here are agencies that have either been in the annual process and received funding, have come before the commission just recently especially, and have been talking about their programs and talking about request and need for funding. And then I also showed you some of the agencies that the county has assisted with ARPA funding. So just briefly, if you bear with me on this particular chart. So the first ones, that have one asterisk are those that have been prior recipients. So the Clay County Economic Development Corporation, Northland Neighborhood, Rebuilding Together KC, Northland Healthcare, MU Extension, and I do want to note, we are statutorily required to fund the MU Extension Program. And right now, in this year's budget, they're getting about $84,000 is what the county gives the MU Extension. That's by statute. We have to give them financial support. Now, in reading the statute today, the threshold in which the county has to support the MU extension is based on the total assessed valuation of the county. And I believe that the minimum is for our size is $10,000. So we far exceed the statutory requirement in supporting the MU extension. But that would have to be set aside. It's really not wouldn't be a grant application since we're statutorily required to give them funding. Clay County Soil and Water, this is an organization that we use specifically when it comes to planning and development. They provide services to us. Arts KC, so again, if they're listed here with 2 asterisks, then those are individual organizations that received funding from ARPA funding from the county. So Arts KC got ARPA funding. Synergy, Northland Workforce Development, Level Up Kids, they have been through before the commission doing presentations and talking about their programs and their requests for assistance. Northland Shepherd Center, Northland Therapeutic Writing, Clay County Senior Services, Liberty Community Course, all of the remainder of these on this list, including municipalities, senior centers, hospitals, water districts, all received funding from the county when it came to ARPA funding. So tonight, for discussion purposes, I'd kind of like to break it into 2 buckets, and they're somewhat process related. So there are two thought processes on how this could proceed. The first could be you come to a decision, and then we go out and solicit applications from qualifying eligible organizations. Those applications are submitted. There would be some kind of review, criteria, evaluation process, some funding recommendation, and then once we had that, we would include that in the analysis and preparing the 2025 budget. Come to the commission, you would adopt whatever the budget is, and then we move forward. The other way that could happen is we could do the budget process and identify funds in the line item for outside agencies. Once the budget is adopted and we know what that amount of money is that is eligible in 2025, then we solicit the applications from agencies, and then kind of how much money is available to be distributed on the projects in which you would like to do. So there's 2 ways of doing the process, and certainly we want to hear from the commission on what your thoughts are and which way you would like to go. The second item is process related also, and that is what is the commission's desire on the evaluation team? So we get the applications from the various agencies, what is the criteria that's going to be used, and then what is the team that you would like to use to evaluate those and come and make a recommendation to the commission with regard to projects to be funded and the amount to be funded as a recommendation. So we kind of want to get your thoughts about how you would like to move forward with this. And with that, I'm open to answer questions and hear what you have to say.
Thank you. I had a couple of just more factual-based questions. On the amount for MU extension, is that figure represent strictly cash, or does that also include the in-kind of providing space?
No, the statute does not talk about in-kind, and the statute that I found was 262.597, and it is based on basically financial support to help them with their operational costs, because they have staffing and other costs, and so it does not, I did not read the statute to indicate that we had an option to do an in-kind, because you're absolutely correct, and not only do we give them financial cash, but we also then provide a location for them.
Well, I guess my question was more, on the bar graphs that you showed us, did those bar graphs represent cash only, or did they represent in-kind as well?
No, that's just cash.
Just cash.
Yeah.
And on the hospitals, they had 2 asterisks. Was that related to the, and I can't remember the name of the program, but where we were partnering with other entities, the hospitals, Cerner at the time, to administer vaccinations to those who wanted them? Is that what that represents on that list, or is that another?
Well, that is true. We did that also as part of the program when vaccinations came. But we also, if you may recall, actually gave cash to the hospitals in Clay County because of the increased expenses that they incurred treating patients with COVID.
Right. So I mean, I don't want to expand the discussion too broadly, but I did want to bring those 2 points out so that they could be considered by the commission. With that, Commissioner Withington, you are recognized.
Is the MU extension the only one that we're required to statutorily, or is it also like the county soil and water?
I don't believe that county soil and that we are statutorily, and unfortunately Kevin has stepped out, we could double check that. I would recommend that would move from being a support of a not-for-profit to being a need, because they do work for us.
Yeah.
And that's a minimal. We fund them $5,000 a year.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I just didn't know if they were also, I know we were giving Children's Mercy like $7,000 a year, and
right.
And then they never really told us how they were going to spend the money. So we ended up cutting them off.
Correct.
So I just didn't know if Clay County Soil and Water was another one that we were supposed to statutorily. So I guess what I'm going to say might piss some people off, but that's not the first time. So I think we need to take a real hard look at the agencies that we give money to. We have a lot of needs in the county for the county government, and a lot of this money could go towards a lot of the issues that we face that we have to then go move money around and everything. So I would seriously like to consider just looking at the agencies that we're statutorily required to. I'm not going to mention anybody by name, because then they might show up next week and yell at me. But, there's some of these agencies get TIF funding, community development block grants from other municipalities, and, I don't think they would be missing, I don't think the money that we give them actually gets a return on the investment where it's supposed to. So, I would like to seriously consider just looking at us funding what we have to statutorily require, and then, Platte County cut off all their funding so they could take care of core government business. So I'd like to see us look at just funding what we statutorily have to require, and then allocating that money towards what we need to do to take care of our day-to-day government operations. But if we are going to move forward, I want to see us cast a broad net. I don't want to just give money to organizations because we've historically given money to these organizations because they're politically connected and they had friends on the commission 20 years ago. And so because of that, we just continue to give them money. And then they get pissed when we ask questions on how they spend the money and act like you're the bad guy for asking questions. So that's where I'm at. So.
And that's why on one of the slides, as I said, it would be a competitive process.
Yeah.
Now, how we get the word out, that would be, we'd work on that, right? And send out as much information we can, and publicize it. Director Jones just reminded me, with soil and conservation, every time that we do a lot split or a development, there is a role that they play for us in going out and doing
I know that they do. I just didn't know if it was something that we had to statutorily do or whatever. But I don't have any problem. They are probably the least of my concerns compared to some of these other organizations on here. So
from the listing that we have up here, I would say the University of Extension and the Soil and Water Conservation, I would consider they would not qualify or fall into the not-for-profit group that we're talking about.
Yeah, my biggest one is that third one on the list that's gotten over $350,000 in 5 years, probably closer to over $1 million over the last 10 years. And as our auditor has pointed out, they still aren't complying with the state audit findings, so.
Commissioner Johnson, you are recognized.
Yeah, so first I want to say that I think most of these agencies, if not all these agencies that requested funds from us and have been getting funds from us in the past do great things. And I'm very supportive of I think just about all of them. I think they do good work, they do good things. And so I don't want to sound like I'm against any of them because, like I said, I appreciate the work they do. I think we've gone down, prior to this commission, I think we've gotten this quagmire that we're in because we went down the slippery slope, commissions in the past, of picking and choosing who they're going to give money to. And I really appreciate the fact that you're kind of cleaning this up now and making it a more professional process that they have to go through and a fair process for all the people out there. You know, we give money to, organizations that help, repair seniors' houses. Well, there are a ton of organizations out there that do that. Why do we pick one over the other? And I think it has to be a fair process for that. But having said that, my personal opinion is I think we need to get out of this business. Similar to what Commissioner Withington said, I don't think government should be in the business of giving money to nonprofits or charitable organizations. And there's a number of reasons why. First of all, I think government sometimes forget, particularly those us and elected officials in this position, forget that whenever we decide to spend something, what we're essentially doing is saying, listen, taxpayer, we're going to take your money from you, in most cases against your will, and we're going to decide a better place to spend it. And particularly when it comes to charitable contributions and charitable organizations, I think it's really wrong to say we're going to take your money and give it to a charitable organization that we think needs your money. I don't think that's government's role, and I think it's wrong. And certainly there are some people out there that have extra income that can help charitable organizations, but there's many people, taxpayers, that are living paycheck to paycheck and that are just barely making ends meet. They got the basic living needs, that's it. They don't have extra money to give. Yet we're going to take it from them and give it to a charitable organization. And these organizations, like I said, they do great jobs, but they need to go out and do their own fundraising and not come to the government for their funds. Clay County, we don't have extra money. If we had extra money, we should give it back to the taxpayers. But we don't have that. We don't have extra money to give out. $250,000, $300,000, that could do a number of things. That's more deputies on the street, more detention officers, more dispatchers. That's more people in roads and bridges. All the department heads, I bet you can all use a number, one or two more people in your departments. That's what that could do for us. We recently had the storms that caused some damage, like to the shooting association deal out there at Smithville. Both those storms, the insurance deductible on those, I think, is $250,000 per incident.
Correct.
That's what this is. This would cover that deductible. I asked the question about prevailing wage earlier because I wanted to hear a number on prevailing wage, and this was my issue when prevailing wage was discussed before I was on the commission, is that, we don't pay our own folks prevailing wage, but our contracted employees will pay prevailing wage to. And certainly we don't pay prevailing wage to all our employees because we don't have the money for it. And if we don't have the money to pay our own employees, well, we should pay them and what they deserve to pay, what they rightfully should earn working for us. But yet we're going to take that money and instead of giving it to them, we're going to give it to charitable organizations. I just think that's wrong. And again, it's nothing against the charitable organizations, but we have a limited amount of money and we have a stewardship over that money that we have taken from people. And again, sometimes unwillingly, most people don't want to pay their taxes, but we've told them you have to. You have to give us your money. And then for us to say we're going to take your money and we're going to decide what charitable organizations you can go to, I think that's wrong. And I think anybody that has extra money to give to charitable organizations should do that on their own. I do. And if one of these organizations stands out to you, I think it'd be great. But I would take it a step further. What I would like to actually see is an ordinance that says we don't do this. An ordinance that says the commission is not allowed to give to charitable organizations. And the reason why, and Commissioner Withington touched on it, is because this has become political. And there are organizations out here that if you say no to them, matter of fact, we had a representative of one organization come to us at the podium right here and say, elections have consequences. Yes. Really? Elections have consequences? You want our money, huh? So I'll get elected again? That ain't gonna happen with me. That's a no vote for me. that's the kind of stuff we need to avoid. And really the only way to avoid that is just to tell everybody, no, we can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. There's an ordinance that says we cannot do that. So, because we have some very convincing folks that come to us and give some very tear-jerking reasons why we should give to them, and they're sincere and they're good causes. It reminds me of my youngest daughter, or my oldest daughter, who was, I don't know, 4 or 5 at the time. A Saturday morning comes running in and wakes up my wife and I and says, Mom, Dad, we have to give money. On the TV it says, please, please, please give, and it has a dog that looks like it's going to die. And she was just heartbroken because this dog was going to die, and if we didn't give them money right now, she had the number written down for us to call and everything. It's like, and I'm sure it's a great organization, and there's a lot of people and organizations that need money. We're not the ones that should be giving it away because it's not our money to give away. If we have extra money, we give it back to the taxpayers. And we don't have extra money because we're not paying our employees enough. We don't have enough employees. We can use more. Like I said, every one of your departments could probably use more employees. And so why are we taking that money and giving it away to charitable organizations? I think it's wrong, and I would actually support and would happily craft an ordinance that basically ties our hands and says, no, we will no longer give to charitable organizations. And so those organizations know, hey, don't try to play the political games. Don't try and pick one of us out and say, hey, can you get this before your commission, and I'll help get you some votes, because that's really what's happening sometimes. So that's where I stand on this. I don't think it's a business that we should be in as a government, and it's not how we should be using our taxpayer dollars. Not that these organizations are bad. They're doing great things, and I appreciate it. But let me give to that organization if I want to. Don't force me to give to it. And that's what I think about that.
Commissioner Lawson, you're recognized.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad to see us thinking this way. I really am. Some of the organizations we have given to are nothing but a political organization. It just darn is. And they will hold your feet to the fire about votes and things of that nature. They've said as much. You know, you're not going to help me. But I know there's people out there that need help, but I guess you have to think charity does begin at home. A good point. However, I can see us not doing any of this, but then we better be a little bit more damn responsible about how we spend the money that people have. Not just, and I'm going to bitch about it again, about spending kind of money that we spend for our study to look at salaries. That just is stuck in my throat bad. We don't think anything about doing that or having some kind of meeting that takes $30,000 or some of the other things that we've approved that I've fought against that I feel are a waste of money. If we're going to start really being fiscally responsible, then damn it, let's really be fiscally responsible. I agree. There's organizations that in the past I've given to, only to find out that the person that is the head of that organization makes $1 million a year. Well, what about all the need that's out there? You're taking $1 million and then you're asking for my hard-earned money? So, yeah, I think we have to be very cautious about what we do. When we do this, I think to some degree there's going to be a lot of repercussions, but I think that we asked for the job and we better have broad enough shoulders if we go this way to handle the fallout that we're going to get. And it doesn't bother me in the least, but, you know, I think we have to be ready for that. And I think that I would like to have a good hard list that says we must give to this, we must do this, and we must do this. And then those are the things we build into the budget. And then if we don't give to anybody else, we make that policy, and we stick to that policy, and we're not making changes every time somebody decides that they want to do this or that. So if we're going to take a hard line, let's take a hard line. I'm all for it. I think it's a great idea, frankly. And then start taking care of our own people and start taking care of our citizens and the services we offer them. And that's really what we're empowered to do. You know, fix the roads and the bridges, you know, those kinds of things. Make sure that our law enforcement has what they need to have to do the job. Those basic services are where we should put all of our efforts. So I'm all for it. I think it's not a bad idea at all.
Commissioner Wagner.
No, thank you. Well, I'll be a contrarian, at least to some degree, because what the heck. Just wait for it. I'll begin with the gentleman that I pointed out when we had our special actions earlier. The gentleman who, what he really needed more than anything was a battery for his wheelchair. He got that from NNI. I have no idea which funding source was used to give it to him, but it was given to him. And houses were also fixed along that road adjacent to Shoto. They're all citizens. They were all citizens then, and who's ever living there now are all citizens of this county. So I want to be very careful when we start saying that people are getting something for nothing, or we are not doing something for our citizens, because they all lived in Clay County, and most of them, to my belief, still do. What I go back to at the end of the day is, what is the public purpose? There has to be a public purpose. I agree that it's not about making sure someone gets $1 million salary or $500,000 salary or whatever the case may be. But for example, if housing serves no public purpose, then I guess we can say that. But I do think that the condition of housing, as an example, where you keep up property values, actually has a down the road effect for the county, because we get property taxes. And if the value of property goes down, that means we and everyone else gets less. But I don't want to go off on that tangent. And I'm just simply saying that if none of the money that we give to any of the organizations serves a public purpose, then you're right. Ditch it, because there's no reason for us to do it. If, on the other hand, it does, then I would at least argue that there is at least some consideration that can be given. And we then have to make the choice, is that public purpose, whether it's healthcare, housing, or whatever else, is less important as far as delivering that public purpose than roads and or deputies. That is a legitimate conversation. But since many organizations that are on here get money from the state, from the federal government, they trickle their way down, there's a public purpose that's served, and we can just argue which of those purposes are better. So I'm gonna leave that point just to say, if there's no public purpose to any of it, then toss it. If there is, then it's worth consideration. Just a couple of other quick points, just to say, yes, we're not here to give someone $1 million salary, but I also recognize within a rubric, and as is done in a number of ways, there is some percentage of what is given that can be used for administration. You can't just have a program, it's got to be run by somebody. And so there's at least some percentage there that I would certainly suggest, whether it's 5%, 10%, 15%, or whatever the award is. But I just go back to then the rubric itself. We're going to get, everyone will come if you don't really have a rubric that's tight, that shows that here's what you're looking for and here's why you're looking for it. I do suggest that if we were to do something, that it would go to some recommending body. I agree, it makes no sense to have group after group after group coming up here soliciting. There should be someone that recommendations go to and then comes to this body. I would suggest that we would approve something in our budget first, but I would also say that just based on the numbers that I see here, I would also probably suggest limiting the number of awards, or at the very least suggesting what the maximum number is, because really $385,000, if you divide it up among too many groups, it's really a whole lot of nothing. Finally, I will just point out that it's always interesting when people say, you know, elections have consequences. I'll just note there are 4 of you up for re-election this year, and not a one of you got an opponent. So, you know what, talk is cheap. And I've certainly had that said to me, I don't know how many times before, and it never really mattered much. So, yeah, if we get rid of the whole thing, will there be some mad people? Probably so. But I also don't worry about that too much. To me, what is the public purpose? If it serves something, then it is worth considering. If it does not, then yeah, get rid of it. But I think if, at the very least, if that public purpose is recognized, then we can compare it to the other public purposes we have, and we can make a decision as to what makes sense for us. So I'll just let go of that laundry list, and hopefully that meant something. So thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter? Oops, I'm sorry. There you are.
Thank you. So I totally agree with Commissioner Wagner in terms of, you know, I don't give a damn if people are upset about what we do fund or not. You know, Commissioner Lawson mentioned that too, and probably if we zeroed them all out, probably we would, you know, hear from it. And I personally don't care at all. I don't take that kind of stuff into consideration. That being said, I sort of half agree with where Commissioner Withington started this, which is I do agree that we should start as a blank slate in terms of not just giving money to folks because they've received it in the past. But I don't think that going to zero in this realm is the right choice, and here's why. I actually agree, I think, with your general thought on this, Commissioner Johnson. You know, as you know, I love freedom and capitalism and all the things. Delivered more prosperity and quality of life to more people than anything else in the history of humankind. So big fan of people having freedom to, for example, choose where they give their charitable contributions. But it's for me, precisely for that reason, that I think sometimes the government giving money to charitable type organizations makes sense. And here's why. The government isn't always the best at everything, right? So that we have consensus on that, I assume. And so often it doesn't make sense for the government to provide a service directly. Often it does. It just is a case-by-case basis. Where nonprofits and charitable organizations can come into play, in my view, is they can sometimes fill the gap where they can deliver the service at a more efficient price than the government would be able to. So, you know, we had stand-up, or we had the kids, stand-up kids, gosh.
Level Up.
Level Up Kids, thank you so much. Level Up Kids, they came in, they told us the services they provide. You know, I think it is very often the case that society is made healthier by making investments in that type of thing. And it makes us all better off when organizations like Level Up Kids make sure that essentially poor children have access to basic dental and eye care. But it might not make sense for Clay County government to get in the business of, being the service provider. And so we can choose to make the investment in that, but to an entity that can more efficiently carry out the service. So, for example, even if we went all the way up to $500,000 in terms of outside agency spending, and with a blank slate in terms of who would get the funds, not just folks who've gotten it in the past, and have a review process to choose who deserves it the most or where the greatest need is. That would be about 1/300th of our county budget. Do I think that investing 1/300th of our county budget into outside entities that have expertise and efficiencies in providing specific services is probably a wise investment for us to be making, I do. I think that would be the right path forward. I agree we shouldn't be giving it out based upon who's politically well-connected, et cetera. And so starting over in terms of allowing everybody to apply and then having a process that treats everybody equally in terms of who gets funds, I fully support that. But I would prefer not to have, for example, an ordinance that says that we can't give out money. I think doing it in a thoughtful way and targeting those funds where they can have the biggest impact, in my view, actually helps keep government out of being overly engaged in services where we're not the most efficient provider. So that's all. Thanks.
Commissioner Johnson.
Are churches allowed to apply for these?
And that would be up to the commission on your definition of who's eligible.
So there's no legal issues with the church applying and us giving this money to churches?
It probably depends on what the purpose is. Yeah. Some of them may have food banks,
Right.
so it would depend on what they're asking for, which would have to be part of the grant process.
Yeah. So, for example, the church I attend, they have a food bank. Commissioner Wagner talking about, I think, a battery for a wheelchair or something. Our church has a storage supply surplus of medical equipment, whether it's crutches, wheelchairs, walkers, that kind of stuff. They also have people that go out and help build houses and or repair houses for particularly people that either can't do it or don't have the funds for it. All those kinds of things, which I think charitable organizations are good for doing. My church doesn't get any public funding for that. It's all donations, which is how I think it should. And we have a different philosophy on what government's role is. I don't think it's government's role, as I mentioned, to be involved in this. And to Commissioner Carpenter's point, I do think it's good. Things like Level Up Kids, there's things that government shouldn't even try to manage because we mess things up pretty darn good. So it's good for the private sector and these nonprofits to run those things, and I agree with that. The disagreement is I don't know that government funding at all should go for that. Like I said, if we have extra money, I think it should go back to the citizens. We don't have extra money because we're not taking care of our own house first, and so that's where I really think our focus should be. And like Commissioner Lawson said, our focus should be on the basics. It's law enforcement, public safety, roads and bridges. We've listed all the things before, but that's just the difference of I guess, philosophy on what government rules and what we should be doing with people's money that we take from them. So that's all. Thanks.
So I agree with a lot of what's been said. We're kind of all over the lot, actually. When it comes to an organization, just to use the example that was just mentioned was Level Up Kids, we do, of course, have the Children's Fund that is administered by a board that we appoint. I would argue that the people we appoint there are probably more qualified, certainly than I am, to assess needs and to, in a more focused way, apply those funds. I know whether they give money to Level Up Kids, I really don't know. But I mean, in one of our more recent budgets, we actually expanded some of these programs as far as building homes for repair work. I mean, it was expanded quite dramatically, more than doubled, I guess. So we're a little bit all over the lot. So I think maybe there are two things that I would like to kind of address right now. One is we are going to need to come up with some kind of a consensus, and I'm going to ask you in a few moments to give us what kind of instruction that you would be seeking from us, if any, on this. And then the second is that because we are heading into budget season, it is probably a good time for us to be having this discussion, and it would probably be in the best interest of everybody if we came to our consensus and our direction prior to starting our process of the budget with any kind of vigor whatsoever, so that staff understands what the will of the commission is and can act accordingly. So with that, Administrator, do you have anything that you can, what would you be looking for from this process at the moment? What kind of instruction are you looking for? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but we can have this discussion. We've been all over, but But when it comes down to doing the work, it is, of course, staff that has to do that. And I think staff is entitled to, and is everybody's best interest that staff get some clear direction from the commission so they can go forward. Commissioner Withington, I'm sorry, I didn't see you there. I'll come back to you later. Just go ahead and address that later, but please, Commissioner Withington, go ahead and ask your question.
Can you go to the figure of how much we budgeted this year?
Yes. There you go.
250.
$267,207.
Oh, I was looking at 2020. Okay. So we're not going to solve this problem tonight. If you're looking for direction, I would be fine with you guys budgeting your 267 or whatever this commission wants to budget. And then we can figure this out. I mean, you know, if you're looking for a consensus or whatever, my suggestion would be to budget the 267 in this year's budget, and then we can figure this out over the next few months. I don't want you to hold up the budget because we're trying to figure out what agencies we will or won't fund. I just, you know, and if we decide not to for whatever reason or whatever, we can always reallocate this to other places.
And quite like, and we knew that you wouldn't come to conclusion tonight. It was really just to open up the dialogue. But I wanted to get in front of you of what the process was. You know, asking for applications when we don't know what's in next year's budget, that would not have been my recommendation if you'd asked me my recommendation. My thought would be, let's go through the budget process. Is it end up at 267? Maybe it's higher, maybe it's a little lower. But once the budget is adopted, then we know what the commission has allocated, and then you can dive into what does that process look like in seeking applications for those funds.
Yeah, no, when I requested all this, I'm glad we're going to open it up. You know, because when I requested this, I was just tired of the same groups getting it every year and not having more options. I mean, like we've talked, Level Up KC, I think would be good. Feed Northland Kids would be another one, but we haven't even considered those because, like I said, some of these groups were politically connected. They started getting money a decade, 20 years ago, and so we only we're limiting it to those groups every year. So that's why I wanted to have this discussion, was just to, if we are going to do it, let's open it up to where it's more competitive to everybody and just not the politically connected groups.
Commissioner Johnson, I think you were seeking recognition.
So Commissioner Withington just said if we are going to do it, and I guess that's where I would like to know, is there, obviously I'm at the extreme from some, I would like to know, is there any support to get out of the charitable contribution business? That's where I'm at. I'll vote no to any of this. I don't want to give money away to these groups, and I don't think we should be, but is there any support for that? Do we need to even go down that road or send that direction, or no?
Commissioner Lawson? Oh, I'm sorry, let me get back down there. There we go.
You know, your heart kind of gets torn. If you're not going to do it, don't do it. But if you're going to look at a couple of organizations that you might want to fund, how do you decide, nope, we're out of the business, but we're going to give these guys some money and give these guys some money? You know, you're either, I don't know. I think that there's some real, it's hard to sit down and, Commissioner Withington's right. There's so much need out there. And we just year after year have said, this is what we've always done, let's continue to do it. I don't think we funded that, what'd you call it,
Level Up Kids?
Huh?
Level Up Kids?
Level Up Kids, that's it, yeah. I went there and looked at it. Wonderful, wonderful group. But, okay, so you say I'm going to give to that organization, which is worthwhile. Doggone, it's a damn good organization. And then you say, well, yeah, but what about this group over here that they really have a need? Or here's the other group over here that, where do you either do it or you don't do it? And if you want to, I think your suggestion, Jason, of going ahead and allocating something in the budget, if anybody's going to get money, I think that the thing that needs to happen is that you widen your net, get a group of people that come in and make their plea, and then sit down as a commission and say, we're going to choose three groups that are very worthwhile. We're going to give a little money to each one. I don't know that if I were not sitting here and I was at home struggling to make my ends meet like everybody does, I don't think that I'd be upset at seeing the commission help someone. I don't think that would upset me in any way, shape, or form. The bottom line is the people have put us here expecting us to make proper decisions. So I think this is something that we really need to take a hard look at. If there's three groups out there that we want to help, okay, let's say this is what this year is going to bring us. The rest of the money, we've got more than enough stuff to allocate it for within the running of the county, salaries for our people, whatever else. So I think we'd be better off going that way. And then when it's all said and done, if we see that we're scraping bottom this year, then we have to cut back the money on what we give away. But let's be realistic about it, and let's just don't do what we've always done. And but I think we can allocate some funds for that, and then just see how our budget comes out, and then start making the hard decisions. What are we going to do? What aren't we going to do? You know, I don't think we can. This is something I think really needs some thought, because you can see both sides of it. You really can. And but I think it needs some deep thought, lots more discussion, and then come to a consensus on it that everybody's comfortable with.
I think one place that we probably would do well to start would be to determine, and it's been brought up, what are our statutory requirements vis-a-vis University of Missouri Extension. The Clay County Soil and Water is clearly, we are paying money and we are receiving a service of value in return. So it almost strikes me that Clay County Soil and Water sort of doesn't fit overly well in this particular line item. I may be wrong, but I think moving it to a different place might be instructive. That way, when we are dealing with these, we are dealing specifically with like organizations. That way, when we look at this, we can say, okay, here is what we are dealing with. Because, like I say, I think we've got a basket of fairly unlike items here, and I think I think perhaps we should give thought to separating those out that we are either statutorily obligated for, or that we are receiving what we consider to be sufficient value, direct value for the money. Clearly, some of these organizations provide a service that does benefit the county. But when I look at Clay County Soil and Water, there's a little bit more, there are fewer dots to connect on that. There is a service and there is money allocated for it. Therefore, it feels more like a contract than some of the other entities that are listed here. So that's just, I think that might not be the worst place to start, would be to separate those items out, and then we kind of know what we're dealing with like items. Commissioner Withington?
Do we know why the number went up from 20 to 21?
Good question. Let's see if I can look at year 21, who might have got extra money.
Was it because
And it also looks like Northland Healthcare was.
Okay, so those were the two. Okay.
Maybe, I'll have to look for you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I don't have that at my fingertips. I do know incrementally after that, it's been increased because of the University Extension. That's usually the one that has increased, just slightly. Everybody else kind of came in at what they had historically been given. And to Commissioner Nolte, looking at 24's budget, of $267,207. If I add the university extension and also the soil and conservation, that's about $90,000 that is obligated. So if you take 90 away from, you've basically got about $177,000 that this year's budget has allocated to not-for-profit organizations.
Well, and I also am thinking in terms of when we're looking at the University of Missouri, I think we should keep in mind two figures in that, and that is what we are giving them and what we are statutorily required. I'm sorry, Commissioner Withington, you were going to say something.
So this year's went down because we didn't give $100,000 to the EDC. So,
Correct.
When we were talking about, was it you, Jerry, that just said like-minded organizations?
Like items, in other words,
items.
like items, yes.
Yeah, so that's why some people got mad at me when I brought up splitting the difference between Rebuilding KC and NNI, and we ended up giving Rebuilding KC more money. But if you look at it, Rebuilding KC was doing more in unincorporated Clay County than NNI was. So my thing is, NNI is not gonna go out of business. They're gonna keep surviving. They get TIF money, they get PIAC funding, which there's a legal memo circulating City Hall about Kansas City using PIAC funds to support NNI, and that they shouldn't be doing that, but that's not our problem. But so that's why, if I was going to have to pick between Rebuilding KC and NNI, I would advocate for Rebuilding KC, because they actually do things outside of Kansas City. For example, NNI, they got mad at me 2 years ago because they told us they were spending their money on fixing up all these homes, but then Dave Mecklenburg told us that they were using 1/3 of that money on codes enforcement in Kansas City, but they never disclosed that to us publicly. I agree that we probably shouldn't be funding all these nonprofits, because this isn't a core function of what we should be doing as a county commission. But I think if we do open this up, we need to really scrutinize how this money's going to be spent. Like, I don't want any more surprises like NNI, where, one person tells you one thing, then they get pissed off at you and CC somebody else on the email, and then that person tells us they're spending the money completely different than what the executive director told us. And then they make you out to be the asshole because you asked the questions, right? So if we are going to do this, we need to really scrutinize how that money's going to be spent. We need to see what the returns, where they're actually going to spend that money. But I'm not necessarily 100% no that we need to cut off all these organizations. But I do agree with what Commissioner Johnson has said, that we need to look at how this actually improves what we need to be doing as a government body. So,
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. Sorry you're having to stand up for all this, but anyway, just a couple of things. One, I think some of the discussion that we've just heard speaks to the importance of a real rubric, and speaks to the importance of getting away, or being cognizant that if there's one thing that's worse than it looking like someone's always guaranteed to get the money, is if you have something that appears to be arbitrary, where you're just kind of making it up as it goes. And so that rubric becomes very important. I would point out with that what the administrator has suggested as far as getting your budget and then going through the process of distribution. Even if we were to give to every organization that's already listed up there, that probably pushes their contracts and therefore their money probably for 6 to 8 months. So they all take a little bit of a haircut if we assume that they were all going to get it. That process drives that. But again, I go back to what is the public purpose? If we use Level Up Kids as an example, after they came here and said, I think they had 2 funders that dropped the amount of money. And I want to say by $300,000, others may have heard differently, but that's the number that sticks in my mind. Well, they're not going to get $300,000 from us, I don't think. But what it does say is everyone's going after funders. We are a natural one for them to come to because we are a governmental entity. And then we just have to ask ourselves, is there a public purpose to help those who cannot afford to get their own dental work done or to have the insurance to get it done themselves, that we provide some preventative health service through the county? And that's how I would frame it, as the public purpose. So, I mean, there are downside costs if we say we're not in the business. But what I will say, and I want to get to go back to what has been said by a couple of my colleagues, which is absolutely correct to ask. It strikes me that it's difficult for us to say we got more than enough money, right, so we can afford to kind of give it away. I think it's kind of to the point you were making. And so it strikes me that part of our budget process, to the extent that this can be done, is to actually understand what our opportunity costs are. Because it seems to me, we'll just use the sheriff as an example. He's not here, so I know he's not going to come up and say anything. You know, he will provide a budget, he will talk to you and work out what that budget may be. Now, he may not move forward with something because we have a placeholder that says $267,000 we're going to set aside for this purpose. But it does also strike me that, to your point, knowing what we may give up, whatever that decision package, which is the term I've always used, is, versus what could be done to assist other organizations or not-for-profits, is a legitimate comparison. Because we may say, well, actually, that's a great idea, Sheriff, and we want to support that. Or we may say, well, actually, no, this charitable issue is actually better, and because we believe it will get more result, whatever that result happens to be. So I don't know, to the extent that, as part of our ongoing budget conversation, whether it's the Sheriff's Office or really any other department that we have, understanding maybe what we could do with those funds as opposed to putting them out for a charitable purpose, to me becomes a more legitimate way to compare those public purposes and getting to whether or not it makes more sense to spend more in-house as opposed to spending it out of house. And I'll let you figure out how you would do that. Maybe a terrible idea, and I admit that because it's getting close to 9, but I just want to come back to a couple of those points, so thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Just real quickly, to Commissioner Withington's point, the jump from 2020 to 2021, it's the EDC, if these bars charts are correct. There's about a $60,000 jump. In 2020, it looks like we gave roughly $40,000. In 2021, we gave them $100,000, if that bar chart's right. So it's a $60,000 increase from 20 to 21 to the EDC. So that would account for that difference. The last thing, I would just encourage my colleagues to go out and talk with some of your constituents and say, hey, let's say we've got an extra $250,000, $300,000 we can spend on either charitable organizations or roads and bridges or law enforcement or whatever else it is that we have here. What would you prefer we do? And I just ask you that you make that effort to see what your constituents want, because I actually have done that and I got my reading, but I just encourage you to do that. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, to round this off, is what would are you satisfied to have just the conversation going on and then go further later on and maybe not get a consensus, or what are you kind of seeking here? Is just the discussion of the issue sufficient for the moment for what you need to go forward?
So I would say my takeaway is we are not going to go out and solicit applications for grants right now, that we will go through the budget process And as part of that budget process, we will identify some funding for outside agencies above and beyond our statutory requirements. During that budget process and discussion, to Commissioner Wagner's point of view, so possibly part of the process is when we present to you some of the departments, we may say, this is what I asked for, but it's not in the current budget, right? And so to getting to your point of what did we not fund and what could we fund if we weren't doing the outside agencies. Now, without having the grant applications and the projects from the outside agencies, you will have some data, but you won't have both sides of the data to make a decision, but you can certainly still make a decision. So my takeaway is it's going to be done during the budget process.
Okay, is everybody pretty much satisfied with that? In that case, we'll go ahead and close this discussion and move on to the next item as it's getting a bit late. Next item, I should say, are reports, and we have one, which is the Auditor's Cash Basis Monthly Report for May 2024. Administrator?
Yes, that's correct. It is the Auditor's Cash Basis report for May of 2024. It was in your packet and your information. Certainly, if you have any questions, please reach out to Auditor Herbert, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, if there are no comments on that, we will move on to County Administrator comments.
Yeah, I do have a few tonight, unfortunately. It's long. Just a couple of reminders to everyone that the Juneteenth celebration for Clay County starts tomorrow night and goes into Saturday. And so you can find information about those activities on our social media site, on Historic Downtown Liberty site. I think there's information in some of the papers that those events will be happening tomorrow night and on Saturday. And then just as an announcement, so we want to give recognition to the budget team, our auditor staff, and all the departments. We have received the GFOA Outstanding Budget Award for the third consecutive year. So that takes a lot of work, and so great job by everybody that participated in that. And then the third item is simply next week's meeting is a little different because it is a joint meeting between the commissioners and the Planning and Zoning Commission. It will start at 6 o'clock. We will have a very brief regular meeting for the commission, primarily on consent to approve invoices so that we can keep the bills paid, then adjourn from that into a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it is a little bit different, but it will be next Thursday at 6 o'clock here in the commission room.
That brings us to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Carpenter. No comment. Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just on a personal note, I just want to give a shout out to my mom, Janet Johnson in Southern California. She turned 90 years old this week, big 9-0. And anybody who's 90 has had a lot of life experience. She's got a lot of good stories to tell. She battled cancer twice and kicked its butt, very serious cancer twice, kicked its butt, and is probably healthier than I am right now. And I'm not kind of kidding about that. She probably looks about my age, too. So happy birthday, Mom.
Very good. Commissioner Withington. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Oh, come on. There we go.
Just want to say congratulations to the Kearney Bulldog baseball team and Liberty North baseball team. They finished third place this year in state. Liberty North had won first place 2 years in a row, but ended up third this time, but that's still very good. And then want to say happy birthday to my oldest, Caden. He will be 15 in 2 days.
Wow. Commissioner Lawson.
Nothing.
Commissioner Wagner.
Yes, I also want to wish Commissioner Johnson's mother a happy birthday, and I'm hoping she'll take my phone call to tell me stories about Commissioner Johnson that I can use in future meetings, but happy birthday.
Commissioner Nolte, I apologize. I have one other item.
Please go ahead, right ahead.
We sort of need to take a poll. How many are not going to be or will be here June 20th? June 20th is a regular meeting, but we already right now know of 2 commissioners that are not going to be available. So just wanting to make sure that we're going to have a quorum for that particular meeting, or if we need to maybe look at a different day that week. You'll be here? Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay. Okay, all right. Great, so it sounds like we're gonna have a quorum, and so we'll be fine, thank you. Yeah.
I think,
So per the ordinance, so the administrator selects one, and if you're all good with it, I was going to suggest that Commissioner Wagner, who's coming off being the past pro tem, be the pro tem stand-in for that meeting. Yes, I'm sure, he works cheap for chocolate. If you get him chocolate, I'm sure it'll be a fast meeting.
actually, I was going to go visit Jay's mom and try to elicit some of those stories in person, and I think Jay has probably got wise to my plan and is going to track me down. It's kind of what's going on. No, I just want to say we had a good long meeting, good discussion, and I appreciate the participation of all involved. We have I've said it before and I'll say it again, we have a commission that has vigorous discussions, but they have been, to my mind, civil and respectful, and I appreciate the diversity of opinion, and I appreciate the quality of the debate and the respect that we've shown one another. With that brings us to our next item, which is executive sessions. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, I move that we go into executive session for personnel and contractual issues.
Motion's been made to go into executive session under Personnel, Missouri Statute 610.021, parentheses 3, and Contractual, Missouri Statute 610.021, parentheses 12, and to adjourn therefrom. Discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson? Commissioner Wagner? Commissioner Thompson? Commissioner Carpenter? Commissioner Withington? Motion passes 6-0.
With that, we will go into executive session and to adjourn therefrom. Thank you very much.